The Tonight Show interview was supposed to celebrate Natalia Dyer's upcoming projects and her continued success beyond Stranger Things. She'd prepared to discuss her transition from teen star to adult actress, with her characteristic thoughtful responses. But when Jimmy asked what she missed most about her teenage years, something vulnerable flickered across her usually composed expression. Natalia sat in the blue chair, looking older than her years, despite her youthful appearance. She'd learned to navigate interviews with careful precision, always aware that every word would be scrutinized. Tonight felt different, like the weight of years of careful answers was finally becoming too heavy to carry. "You know, Jimmy," she began, her voice softer than usual, "everyone asks what it's like to be successful so young. But no one ever asks what it costs when you get everything you thought you wanted at 17. Jimmy leaned forward, immediately sensing this wasn't going to be another standard celebrity success story. His years of hosting had taught him to recognize when someone was about to share something deeply personal. "What did it cost you?" he asked gently. Natalia took a deep breath, looking down at her hands before meeting his eyes. "My childhood," she said simply. "I was 17 when Stranger Things premiered. And overnight I went from being a normal teenager to being this." The studio audience grew quiet, sensing they were about to witness something more intimate than typical entertainment. The camera stayed focused on her face as she gathered the courage to continue. "I thought I was ready for fame, but you can't prepare for losing yourself that quickly. This sounds terrible to say, because I'm so grateful," Natalia continued, her voice growing steadier. "But I woke up one day and realized I had no idea who I was outside of Nancy Wheeler. I'd become famous for playing a character, but I'd forgotten how to be myself." Jimmy's expression showed genuine concern as he listened. "When did you first realize this was happening?" he asked softly. "My 18th birthday," she replied, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I was in a hotel room in Los Angeles, completely alone. My castmates were working. My old friends had stopped calling months earlier." She paused, the weight of the memory clearly affecting her. "I sat on that hotel bed and realized I hadn't had a normal teenage experience in over a year. No prom, no hanging out at friends' houses, no normal first relationship. I called my mom crying, asking her if we'd made the right choice." Natalia continued, her voice growing quieter. "Because I had everything I thought I wanted, but I felt emptier than I'd ever felt in my life." The camera caught the pain in her expression as she relived that night. "She flew out the next day and just held me while I cried. I kept saying I don't know who I am anymore over and over." Jimmy moved from behind his desk to sit closer to her, his gesture showing support. "How did the fame change your relationships with people your age?" he asked gently. "They disappeared," Natalia said bluntly, wiping her eyes. "Not because they were bad friends, but because we suddenly lived in completely different worlds. I couldn't relate to their problems, and they couldn't relate to mine. I remember being invited to a high school party and having no idea how to act like a normal teenager," she continued through tears. "Everyone was either too nervous to talk to me or wanted something from me. I felt like an alien." The studio was completely silent, except for the soft sounds of people in the audience getting emotional. "What about dating? How did fame affect that?" Jimmy asked. "I didn't date for 3 years," Natalia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "How do you trust that someone likes you for you when millions of people think they know you from a TV show? Every guy who approached me, I wondered if he saw me or Nancy Wheeler," she continued, fresh tears forming. "I became so paranoid about people's motives that I just shut everyone out." Jimmy handed her a tissue from his desk. "Did you consider walking away from acting?" he asked. "Every day for about 2 years," Natalia said honestly. "I thought maybe if I quit, I could go to college like a normal person, make real friends, figure out who I was supposed to be. But then I realized I'd already missed that window," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "I couldn't go backward. I had to figure out how to move forward as this weird hybrid of famous person and lost teenager. The hardest part was the isolation," she added, looking directly at Jimmy. "Everyone assumes that because you're successful and famous, you're happy. But I was lonelier than I'd ever been in my life." Jimmy reached over and squeezed her hand. "How did you start to find yourself again?" he asked. "Therapy," Natalia replied without hesitation. "A lot of therapy. I had to learn how to separate Natalia the person from Natalia the actress from Nancy Wheeler the character. I also started saying no to things," she continued. "No to interviews that felt invasive. No to projects that didn't feel right. No to appearances that were just about being seen. I made a rule that I had to do at least 3 normal, non-industry things every week," she said with a small smile through her tears. "Coffee shops, bookstores, museums. Places where I could just be a person." Jimmy turned to address the camera. "What Natalia is sharing is incredibly important. The pressure on young performers to grow up in public is something we don't talk about enough. The thing is," Natalia added, finding her voice, as someone who'd learned hard lessons, "everyone sees the success, the red carpets, the opportunities. They don't see the 18-year-old crying in hotel rooms." She looked directly into the camera. "If you're watching this and you're a young performer, or if you know one, please remember that fame doesn't fix the normal struggles of growing up. It just makes them more complicated. And if you're a parent considering this path for your child," she continued with fierce determination, "please make sure they have support systems that have nothing to do with the industry." Jimmy wiped his own eyes, clearly moved by her honesty. "How do you protect your sense of self now?" he asked. "Boundaries," Natalia said firmly. "I have friends who knew me before Stranger Things, and I prioritize those relationships. I do things that have nothing to do with acting. I also learned that it's okay to grieve the normal teenage years I didn't have," she continued. "That loss is real, even if the trade-off brought me opportunities." Jimmy stood up and helped Natalia to her feet. "Natalia Dyer, everyone," he announced. "Someone brave enough to show us that success at a young age comes with a price we rarely talk about." The audience rose in applause that felt different from typical entertainment applause. This was recognition of vulnerability, of someone willing to complicate the narrative around young fame. As the show ended, Jimmy kept his arm around Natalia's shoulders. "Thank you for sharing something so personal," he whispered. "You just gave a lot of young performers permission to admit when they're struggling." 3 months later, Natalia partnered with mental health organizations to create support groups specifically for young performers transitioning from child to adult actors. Her advocacy helped highlight the unique challenges of growing up in the entertainment industry. The interview segment went viral across social media platforms, with child development experts praising her for addressing the psychological impact of early fame. Industry leaders began implementing better support systems for young performers. Natalia received thousands of messages from young actors who said her honesty gave them courage to seek help and set boundaries. Several parents reconsidered pushing their children into entertainment after seeing the emotional cost. Her castmates publicly supported her decision to share her struggle, with several revealing their own difficulties with early fame. The Stranger Things cast became advocates for better mental health resources in the industry. Jimmy continued featuring child advocacy experts on his show, using Natalia's story as a starting point for conversations about protecting young performers. "That interview changed how we think about interviewing young stars," he told her months later. Today, Natalia speaks openly about the cost of early fame during interviews and industry panels. Her message resonates with audiences who see beyond the glamour of young stardom to its human cost. The teenager who once cried alone in hotel rooms became an advocate for protecting the mental health of young performers. Sometimes the most important performances happen off-camera, when someone chooses truth over image management. Her hotel room confession that night became a turning point, not just for her, but for an industry slowly learning to value the well-being of its youngest stars. Because success at 17 might look like a blessing, but it often comes disguised as a beautiful burden. The birthday she spent alone in that hotel room now serves as a reminder that fame without authentic connection is just well-decorated loneliness. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give young performers is permission to be young before they're required to be perfect.